but thank you very much for allowing me to speak, Council. I've been looking at all the different data and all the figures and all the rhetoric that has been bandied about in this society, and I started wondering, how much is it for the true operating costs between buses and light rail? I couldn't find much data around here in Canada because we are such a small sample rate. So I found some down in the States put out by the U.S. government, and I would like to read some of an article by Christopher McKechnie dated June 29, 2016. And he writes, one of the never-ending arguments in the battle between bus, especially bus rapid, and light rail is which costs more. From the perspective of capital costs, it's clear that light rail costs more to build than rapid transit due to the requirement for tracks, electric catenary, light rail lines, etc. need their own garages, while bus rapid transit lines can store their buses at existing depots. The difference between capital costs greatly diminishes as true BRT buses operating on exclusive rights-of-way, such as Ottawa, are built of light BRT, which is basically express or limited stop buses operating along the street. In terms of operating costs, it's often argued that light rail is cheaper to operate because the fact that the capacity of light rail is so much greater than buses allows for fewer light rail trains to be run. And we've all been talked about that. It's true that one light rail train consists of 3 60-foot-long cars, can carry as many people as 4.5 regular buses. What this means is that assuming passenger load remains constant, a light rail train that has 3 cars can run every 10 minutes would need to be replaced by standard buses every 2 minutes. That's 6 light rail trains per hour equals 27.5 buses per hour. If there's enough demand along a corridor to operate buses every 2 minutes, then a light rail train would have lower operating costs than buses. But how often do light rail trains actually operate? With few exceptions, including almost none of the American cities, they do not have bus corridors that have sufficient demand to operate buses every 2 minutes. So they're choosing to operate their light rail lines as often or more than existing bus services. Replacing a bus route operating every 15 minutes with even a 2-car light rail train operating every 15 minutes is the equivalent of increasing corridor capacity by 300%. While ridership is likely to increase due to the introduction of trains, it is likely to increase by 300%. All of the above would be bad enough if it cost the same amount to move one bus versus one light rail. Unfortunately, as the table in the U.S., it's much more expensive on average. The table which I have shows operating costs per hour for one bus and one light rail vehicle for 15 American cities. The data is from the National Transit Database website, which shows that it costs almost twice as much on average to move one light rail vehicle per hour versus one bus. The amount of $233 per hour versus $122 for a bus. We all know why it costs more, because of all the infrastructure. However, so in closing, let's ask ourselves that despite of all the talk of development and its associated money flows in the city, who's spending the money and who's receiving the money? For the initial investment of $1 billion for a streetcar to nowhere, we are saddled with the operating cost of an LRT that is on average double the price of enhanced bus services based on North American data. Numbers have come out of approximately $70 million so far has been spent. Now, why is the general public being misled with false facts and innuendo in an obviously flawed plan that gives Hamilton's assets to a private agency and lands that are affected? I'll bypass the next part. An analogy would be, if my Aunt Winnie gave me a shiny new car, which would be the better option? A Honda or Toyota Civic, or Honda Civic or Toyota with great gas mileage and long-term operating costs that are low, or rather a Lamborghini that's a shiny new thing that looks great to drive while it's sucking our wallets dry of every dime that we ever make? This LRT experiment across America has been a disaster for many of the cities who are just now realizing how much money it actually costs to run an already outdated dinosaur. Take
Brian.
note of Chicago, Detroit, even Kitchener. There are
Brian,
a lot of...
Your time is up.
One sentence.
Okay, go ahead.
Who are just now treading on quicksand with no end in sight, with no idea what the further costs are going to be over the next 25 years.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any questions? No questions? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Smiley. Up next is Cheryl St. James and Gaspar Bonomo.